Hi, welcome to our webinar on bridging risk-based and operations-focused incident classification with VERIS and ATT&CK. So joining me today is Alex Pinto, Phil Langlois, and Tiffany Bergeron. I'm John. I'm the director of the Center for Threat-Informed Defense. Alex, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, so my name is Alex Pinto, and I'm the senior manager at cybersecurity consulting in the Verizon Business Group, and I run the team that puts together the data breach investigation report year over year. And Phil?
Yep, name is Phil Langlois. I'm one of the authors that Alex mentioned that works on the DBIR. My main focus is on threat intelligence, and I dabble a little bit in data science.
Hi, I'm Tiffany Bergeron. I'm a principal cybersecurity engineer at MITRE Corporation, and I provide leadership for multiple R&D projects under the Center for Threat-Informed Defense, including the one we're going to talk about today. Thank you.
Well, thanks, team, for getting together today to talk about this new project. Alex, as we get started here, I'm going to look to you in a minute to give us a bit of an overview of Verizon Cyber. I'll follow up and kind of expand on a bit about the center and kind of how we work together in partnership to advance threat-informed defense for the community. And then we'll dig into the meat of this webinar, really understanding what it is we've done to bring together these two communities to better understand incidents and threats and leverage that common vocabulary that is ATT&CK partnered up with the incident model that VERIS provides. So with that, Alex, do you want to kind of give us a little bit of context about your organization?
Yes, of course. So I'm here representing Verizon Business, and more specifically the cybersecurity consulting org there, right? And that's where the DBR has lived all these years, right? So there's three main areas, right, that covers the work. One is more security assurance, where we're doing the evaluations, doing the security assessments, right? We have cyber defense, where we implement the security. And there's VTRACK, where all the threat intelligence, right, and incident response lives. And that's where our joyful report has been for 16 years now, trying to provide the best possible insights that we have in the threat landscape, right? It would be a miss not to say that VTRACK is now at its 20th anniversary, right? We just celebrated that anniversary at 15 last year, so now it's their time to shine as well. But anyway, here's some statistics, some numbers, right? Of course, give them a call if you want to give them money, right? But otherwise, just read the report, and I'm happy with all of you.
Awesome. Thanks, Alex. And obviously, everybody knows what the data breach investigation report is. And I'm super excited to be able to partner with you and the team at Verizon and the Center for Threat-Informed Defense to work together to really try to systematically advance threat-informed defense. So about 3.5 years ago, I co-founded the Center for Threat-Informed Defense. Our goal was to bring together sort of the best and the brightest, very sophisticated cybersecurity teams from around the world, from across sectors, to bring in sort of a diversity of perspectives to identify hard problems and solve them for the whole community. Ultimately, we want to improve cyber defense at scale. And now, 3.5 years into running the center, we've kind of established a bit of a track record. We actually now have 31 members as of today, and we've published 23 different research projects. We have a whole set of ideas that we're evaluating and developing into future research projects. And I'd say that at this point, we have a relatively mature innovation pipeline. And ultimately, the purpose of that innovation pipeline is to systematically identify hard problems and develop solutions that benefit the whole community. And so very fortunate to have Alex and Phil here with us today as partners, working with us to advance threat-informed defense. So I've mentioned threat-informed defense a few times, and I thought I would start by just explaining a little bit about the context that we kind of came into threat-informed defense with. When we got started with the Center for Threat-Informed Defense, MITRE ATT&CK was really kind of growing in popularity and increasingly used by operational security teams as a way to communicate and understand adversary behaviors. A relatively strong community has built up around and has been supporting ATT&CK now for many years. And what we found a few years back was that community was interested in getting together to not just advance attack, but also advance resources around operationalizing attack. And that's how we evolved into creating this research organization called the Center for Threat Informed Defense. And so today, the attack community is very strong. It's global. The community drives what is in the attack knowledge base. Everything in the attack knowledge base is defined in scope to be based off of real world adversary behaviors. So there's intel reporting that's used to justify each and every different adversary technique that's in the knowledge base. And most organizations today think of attack, or many organizations today think of attack as really providing this common language. And they have, operational security teams, whether it's like the Intel team or your red team or your SOC analysts, that leverage attack to communicate and coordinate their activities around defending against, understanding, or testing specific adversary behaviors. And so at this point, there's well over 100 contributors out there contributing to the knowledge base, and there's literally thousands of organizations around the world leveraging attack. And so we wanted to figure out a way in this project to kind of tap into that attack community that's talking about and coordinating activities around adversary behaviors and bring them together with the set of incident responders that are contributing to VERIS. So I wanted to also kind of highlight that what we've seen over time, kind of building upon attack and building upon David Bianco's pyramid of pain, is there's been this like global shift towards tracking and understanding adversary behaviors with a goal of increasing the cost for the adversary to achieve their operations or their goals, right? And so attack brings us this knowledge base of known adversary behaviors. And the pyramid of pain really tries to advance this philosophy of working towards understanding, detecting, and mitigating behaviors, or the TTPs, because those are the most painful things that we can do to the adversaries. If you're able to block an IP address or block a file hash or detect a file hash, that's great. But for an adversary, it's trivial for them to recompile a file and change a file hash. If, on the other hand, we're able to understand the underlying behavior, the way in which an adversary is trying to achieve a goal, and detect or block or prevent that, we make the adversary have to go back and come up with a new approach, right? And so the knowledge base that attack provides is the set of known behaviors, and the philosophy of the pyramid of pain suggests that we focus on defending against those behaviors to inflict the greatest pain on our adversaries. So those two together, you have this really rich community that's focused on understanding and detecting adversary behaviors. So I'm going to hand it over to Alex to give some context on VERIS.
So in this spirit, right, of bringing those different levels and different tiers of understanding of a potential attack, or a way that a threat actor might manifest themselves into your environment, right, when we're trying to do something malicious, right? We're here to talk about how to bring attack, which John just described, right? The work has been done for many, many years inside of MITRE, to VERIS, which is the work that has been done for many, many years inside of Verizon, as the supporting framework for the work that we do on the DBIR, right? It isn't quite as old as the DBIR. It was right about the third one that we realized that, oh, okay, if we have a lot of data, this actually gets pretty hard for us to not confuse ourselves and making sure we're having consistent taxonomy and consistent classification for everything, right? So from that need, right, came this this framework, right? The Verizon Enterprise Risk Sharing Incident Sharing, which eventually became vocabulary for event recording and incident sharing. We didn't feel like Verizon needed another name there, right? It was already so closely associated with the DBIR anyway, right? So if you want to understand what VERIS is, if you want to see some examples, right, all you have to do is open your copy of the DBIR, right? Every single proper noun that we have there, when we say something is ransomware, when we say something is phishing, This is all very much in a tree-based hierarchy taxonomy where use of stolen credentials is hacking, and hacking is a type of action that an actor can do. So just to go into more detail, I'm going to pass it over to Phil, which will give you kind of the lay of the land there, right? But it has been very useful for the DBIR so far, and has been very useful for companies who are looking for a high level understanding, a more risk oriented understanding, or where they should be focusing their efforts, right, as far as building controls to respond to the environment, so to speak. So Phil, please take us away.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as Alex mentioned, right, VERIS is essentially what, I like to think of as the grammar of breaches and incidents, right? There's these components that make a sentence that really describe the vast majority of breaches and incidents out there, right? There's four major components. So you have the actor, which is essentially the who, right? Who is creating the breach or the incident, right? Is it an external actor? Is it someone internally that is either doing something maliciously or might accidentally be, sending an email to the wrong person or standing up a database that's unsecure? What's the action, right? What did that individual do? And what was the asset that was compromised? All right. So what was the actual intended target? Was it the user that was being compromised through a phishing or social engineering attack? Was it a server in which the stolen credentials were used against? And then lastly, what is the attribute? What's the actual outcome of this incident? Are we talking about loss of confidentiality, loss of integrity because software was installed, malicious software was installed on the system, or availability? And if anyone's ever had to do any form of CISP test, you probably recognize those as the CIA triad. So by really building our language with these four components allows us to talk about not only what are the actions, but what are the trends, and also kind of tie it to mitigations, right? What are the most important priority systems based on what's being targeted? And the neat part is that you have to pay all of $0 to leverage it. This is something that we've provided for free, and you actually see links here for verisframework.org, and then also on our GitHub site where it provides the whole schema. In addition, we have tools that we've created to kind of help organizations leverage it, including a simple user interface that allows you to code the incidents. And these are the exact same tool sets that we use day in, day out to code our 16,000 incidents or so. But I think what the really interesting thing is on the next slide is when we start looking at how does this tie into the larger ecosystem, right? And I think there's an obvious connection, right? When we start talking about VERIS and the actions, and we've talked about TTPs that exist and are captured within MITRE ATT&CK, obviously there's got to be some level of cross-pollination between the two, right? These are cutting the same piece of pie. It's the same view, it's the same map, maybe different typographies, maybe different type of maps, but we're looking at the same landscape, just different levels of detail. So what we really wanted to do was provide a way in which we can tie this tactical, technical information that exists within ATT&CK to the higher strategic level information that exists in VERIS, right? And this is what we were able to do with the great collaboration of the community and CTID to kind of move this problem forward. And, obviously we're vested in this because, we work with VERIS. One of the unique things is that other organizations also came together to work on this because this was a value, this is a type of problem that they were facing. Because once again, when it comes to translating from that very technical information to something that might be a little more abstract, maybe something that's a little more familiar to, folks within risk management, this is where we can kind of make these connections. So from there, we've come together and we've created an authoritative mapping of VERIS and ATT&CK, which we've published here within our GitHub. And it's not just, here's a bunch of JSON files, good luck, have fun. We've actually provided a lot of resources to go along with it. In addition, I think go to the next slide. we talk a little bit about the process. So it's important to understand how we did these mappings and how we've connected these dots. There's a lot of, many to many relationships, but ultimately you have the ability with this mapping to go up in terms of going from the very technical information to a little more abstract. And then you can also kind of tie down and say, if I'm looking at this VERIS action, what's the world of potential techniques that exist within that, right? So it's, kind of a generalized map of the world versus the very specific techniques, which is still of value when we're talking about, whittling down information. So we go to the next slide. One of the things that we really wanted to make sure we did as we were going through this process was making sure that we can provide the data in a format that can be leveraged, right? It's not just a question of doing this and then putting it out of the world and then not touching it anymore. We wanted to make sure that we can make this kind of product be useful as much as possible. And by doing that, we really have to leverage existing data standards. So everything is tied into sticks, and which is pretty much supported by whatever tool that does threat intelligence or will consume attack data. It is incorporated as to part of the sticks model, so you can do these crosswalks using already the existing tool sets. And in addition, we also have some Python tools that we've created that allows us to manage these relationships easier as they exist within the spreadsheet and do the translation to the different layers and the different outputs. Tiffany's going to do a job in terms of explaining a little bit more detail the type of outputs and associated products we have.
All right, thank you, Phil. So here is an example of one of the outputs of the mappings. This is an attack navigator visualization of the enterprise TTPs, so adversary TTPs, contained in an attack as mapped to VERIS. The overlay that's depicted is attack for enterprise. And the darker the shading of a given technique, the more VERIS entries that were mapped to it. So the pop-up box, although it's very difficult to read, it does show the VERIS enumerations that are linked to it in that A4 framework that was discussed previously. We also have those views provided for attack for ICS, attack for mobile, and attack by each group. So this is an example of a group mapping. This takes VERIS actor motives linked to financial and espionage and links to different attack groups. Here's an example of attack group 32 Lazarus, which has a VERIS actor motive of espionage. And you can see here the overlay showing the attack techniques mapped to the VERIS enumerations for this particular navigator group. We also wanted to make sure that we had documentation provided so people could understand how to use this translation. So we did develop a set of user stories to go along with this information. We have 4 specific user stories depicted here: as an incident responder, as a CISO or ISO, as a SOC analyst, and as a security engineer. This shows things that these types of people might need to do in the course of their day related to active security incidents or potential threats or targets to their industry or their networks. And to help give them a way to take these translations to either move from the larger incident, as could be coded in the VERIS language, or to look down to the specific attack TTPs associated with those types of events, and the way that you could use to move in between these two types of languages. And this is all presented in a VERIS-to-ATT&CK website that we've published. The link is down at the bottom, and as you can see, this includes all of our VERIS mappings to MITRE ATT&CK documentation. This will help give you a nice overview to understand the project in more detail, the background information, where we were, where we've come. It also shows you the methodology that was used, as well as providing all of the individual mappings, and a little more information on the use cases, as well as different example scenarios for those use cases. And you can see that there's a QR code that you can scan there as well to access the website. What's next? Phil, I'd like to hand that back over to you, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, I think we know that ATT&CK has evolved maybe a few times. I think there's just been a couple versions of it over its few years. VERIS also evolves. Every year we go through a process of updating it. So one thing that we want to make sure is that we're able to stay up to date in terms of the different versions of both VERIS and ATT&CK, so that organizations can make sure that they have the most relevant, up-to-date information. In addition, we're always looking for ways internally, both Verizon, as part of the DBIR team, to find out how we can leverage this great mapping. And one of the things, I'd say it's a preview, but I think everyone in the future already knows the DBIR is out. So by the time this is recorded, DBIR has probably been out. But we've included the mapping within each of the different patterns. So the patterns are essentially a collection of actions that are similar. So for example, the most complicated pattern is system intrusion. And this is why you see pretty much the entire list of the relevant attack techniques, which I'm like big chunk of the techniques listed in ATT&CK. What we're doing is we're trying to just draw attention to the fact that these are not just abstract concepts, right? There are some actual very tangible actions and tangible TTPs that we can tie into, even though if it's a large group. It's obviously it's not all of them, but it's still, it's you're still whittling down that forest and have you. And then, of course, we're going to continue to work with our partners. If it weren't for the great collaboration we've had with CTID and the different partners in industries who have helped support this project, they wouldn't be here, and we want to make sure you can continue to support the different use cases that they're facing, different challenges that they're facing as well. So I think I hand it over to you, John.
Yeah, thanks. And so I think the thing that the critical takeaway here is, I'd say, in partnership, we've built out the ability for organizations that love and use the data breach investigation report to see and understand specific adversary behaviors from attack in the same way that their internal security operations team are using tracking and coordinating defenses against attack. And so we've made that linkage that I hope saves teams tons of time and allows us to be much more efficient and effective in our defenses. And I think the other thing that's critical here about the linkage that we've created is, there's a whole wealth of resources built on top of VERIS and around VERIS that are now accessible to the attack community in a way that they weren't before. And the opposite is also true. The VERIS community, through that connection to adversary behaviors in attack, now has the ability to tap into all of the different defensive capabilities out there, the sort of mapped resource to security controls that help you understand how to mitigate specific adversary TTPs. So now all of those resources are essentially cross-linked and available to security practitioners. And again, hopefully making things much more efficient and allowing us to become much more effective in our defenses. So as we kind of start to wrap things up here, I would just encourage you all, if you like what you heard and you're curious, go check out the Attack to VERIS website at the bottom of the page here. Take a look at the DBIR report and check out how attack is referenced in there for this year's publication. Definitely, as it says here, spread the word. For the Center for Threat Informed Defense, our mission is to create impactful work that improves cyber defense for the whole community. That starts with people knowing about our work, using the work, applying it to solve problems. And so we definitely need your help in getting the word out there. If you're using the mappings and you have comments, questions, let us know. Don't be shy. We love issues on our GitHub or an email asking about how to apply the work. Those are all great, and we love to hear about successes and challenges. But ultimately, I just would encourage you to review the mappings work, use it, and tell us what you think. I just wanted to take a moment to thank you all for joining us for this webinar to learn about this latest center release, where we've connected the attack community and the VERIS user community here, and thank Tiffany and Phil and Alex for joining me today.
Yes, thank you, everyone. We look forward to hearing from you.
Thanks, folks. Hope you enjoyed DBR this year. I'm sending this message from the past, so I don't know the response yet. I just hope we're all happy today with what came out of that.
All right. Thanks, everyone, for joining, and let's keep making the security community awesome. Cheers.
Thanks.